Good afternoon. Thank you for attending this webinar of Georisk. I'm Philippe Dumas, the coordinator of the project Georisk. Many people are attending, so we will start in 2 to 3 minutes. Thank you for your understanding. Okay, good afternoon again. I see that we are nearly 100 people in this webinar. Many more will connect, but good time to start because we will have an intensive discussion today. So you can see from the agenda, we will discuss the final product result of Georisk. The objective is indeed to see the best practices to accelerate investment in geothermal project. We mentioned in Europe because maybe you attended that. In June, we organized one at an international level. But today, we'll focus the discussion more at a European level. For that, I will start shortly to present you the latest project results, but something more interesting for you, a new proposal coming from the European Commission about risk mitigation schemes. Then I will give the floor to Christian Boissavy from the French Association to present the 5 key guidelines to set up a risk mitigation scheme. And we will conclude the first session with a presentation of a main achievement in some key countries. We'll have Anna Marenador presenting for Hungary, Beata Kepinska for Poland, Spiros Karitsas for Greece, and we'll have Virginie Schmidelbosch to present the new French expert fund. Then we'll have a second session, which will be a roundtable to see the start of art in countries where the scheme is not yet established, but there's something going on. So we'll have Marian Krepan for Croatia, Gregor Rom for Slovenia, Bill Arar from Denmark, and Sebastian Yass for Belgium. So you can see we have a good agenda. We will have time also for questions and answer conclusions. So you have different possibilities. You can use the chat to chat with other participants, but you can also raise a question in the question section box, and we will try to answer today as many as possible questions orally. If it cannot be answered today, we'll do a follow-up email. With this short presentation, I'm starting now to present you the first result of Georisk. Georisk, it's a project started in October 2018, so already some 3 years ago. And we are about to finish it because the project is ending end of September. At the end of this month, we will end Georisk project. The Georisk project was composed of, you can see, 15 partners from different countries, as you see from the countries we mentioned already in the agenda, France, Turkey, Greece, Hungary, Poland, Germany, and that's it. We had a consortium of partners coming from different sectors, some representative of industry, of the financing sector, of a public entity, of the geoscience also, in order to have all the background for developing our project. In terms of geographical coverage, you could see, I mentioned already, Europe and international level. Indeed, we had two steps. The first step was to develop, during the project duration, a risk mitigation scheme in key countries. And you can see the main countries highlighted in red. So already countries with a scheme: France, Germany, Switzerland, Turkey, and countries where we were aiming at establishing a scheme: Poland, Hungary, Greece. We will see in the next presentation where we have been successful. But during the project duration, we wanted also to establish some partnership with some countries to see how we can help the establishment of risk mitigation scheme. And you can see the countries in Europe were Denmark, Netherlands, Croatia, Belgium, Slovenia, Serbia. And at a global level, Mexico, Kenya, Chile, Canada. But the objective overall is really to have some conclusions available for all of the countries all over the world. So our objective at the end of Georisk is to have some tools that will be useful in Europe, but also at a global level for setting up a scheme. And that is the next presentation from Christian Wasavi. Because what is Georisk for Europe is that we know we have a large potential in Europe. The geothermal resources is present in many countries, but we are far from tapping into this potential. And one reason why is because we need to de-risk projects. We want in the next 10 years we call that the geothermal decade, to have much more growth rate, nearly exponential, because we know that there's a potential for developing many projects, but one of the first barriers for the development, especially when we speak about deep geothermal projects, is de-risking schemes. So what we started with in Georisk was to have a risk assessment. So we started with a blank page. Also, for some of us, for 20 years, we work on this topic of risk mitigation, but we wanted to start with a blank page to define the context, the identification of a potential risk, to rank the different risks in a matrix, and to propose that in an online tool for developers, which we call the Georisk report. It's available online. It will be presented in more details in the next presentation, but already feel free to visit the website to see this Georisk tool. A second aspect of our project is not only to assess the risk and to identify the risk, but to tackle this risk component with financial tools. So we did not look at in our project but technological development for de-risking project. We focused on financial tools. So we look at where it is already existing risk mitigation schemes with existing financial tools. What are the boundary conditions, the framework conditions for establishing a scheme, and what are the conditions for the transition in the insurance scheme? Because indeed, one thing we immediately started with in our project was that there's a question of market maturity. It's the question of brownfield and greenfield. We cannot have the same instrument for different market maturity, and we were looking at what are the conditions for going from one market maturity, a juvenile market, to a developing market. And for that, we have also established a help desk focusing with a target group, public authorities, to give them some tools for establishing a risk insurance scheme. The help desk is also available online, and I encourage you to visit the website to know the details. And no, the second part of the project, you could say, was also with the tools available, it was to implement the tools, to promote the tools, to develop the tools. And with that, we had a focus, I mentioned Hungary, Poland, Greece, creating relationship with decision makers, developing support for establishing the schemes. And last but not least, an important activity was also simulation for budgetary constraints, a financial model for 10 years of operation of a scheme. What are the different parameters for having some sustainability in such a scheme? So that will also be presented today. In top of the key countries, we also look at other countries where we could replicate. It will be the second session today. We focus today on Croatia, Slovenia, Belgium, and Denmark. But I told you in June we presented the result for the rest of the world, especially Canada, Kenya, Mexico, and Chile. I don't want to be too long with my introduction because I say this today is to present results, so not to present you the project. So with that, I want to present you the first project. So here you can see the structure of the replication, the first result of the project, which is that thanks to the inputs given by Georisk to European Union institutions, we have been able to see, this is the website, sorry, we have been able to see in the proposal of the Commission issued on 14th of July 2021, so it's less than 2 months ago, it's quite short. The Commission, in the framework of a Green Deal, published a package of legislation for climate and energy, which we call the FIT for 55. 55 means 55% greenhouse gas emission reduction by 2030. And for that, there were a series of climate and energy legislation for electricity, industry, transport, and buildings. And one of that was the revision of the Renewable Energy Directive. And I told you that notably thanks to the input given by Georisk to European Commission, we are quite happy to see that one of the new measures planned by the European Commission in the new Renewable Energy Directive, now it will be discussed by members of the European Parliament, but also by the different countries, member states of the European Union, two proposals for de-risking projects: the creation of risk mitigation frameworks to reduce the cost of capital for renewable heat and cooling projects. So you can see that it's a good provision because the Commission is promoting risk mitigation schemes. Two aspects. In renewable heat and cooling, if we look at the other technologies, except geothermal, is biomass, solar thermal, or ambient heat, they don't have really risk problems. So we can see that such a framework will be mainly for geothermal. But here we see it's focusing on heating and cooling. So we'll have to see for cogeneration project or a pure electricity project how it will be done. But it's a good proposal that we are seeing, and we have to work all together as a geothermal sector to have that implemented. And the second one, interesting, it's another kind of instrument. It's not a pure risk mitigation framework, but it's a tool that can help also development of projects and giving security for investment is the promotion of heat purchase agreements, especially for corporate and collective small consumers. So for industry, when you supply geothermal heat and cooling to industry, heat purchase agreement can be seen also as a kind of de-risking instrument. So just to introduce these topics, but today we will see country per country how this is seen and how we can work all together for having that not only in the countries we mentioned, but all over Europe. Last but not least, I want to invite you to the last debate we'll have for Georisk. So just before the end of our project on the 30th of September, we'll organize in the framework of IGC Invest, which is on 28th and 29th of September, a de-risking session on the Tuesday, 28th September afternoon, risk management in geothermal projects, so notably the public and private risk mitigation solutions and technical mitigation solutions. So if you're interested by this topic, I also invite you to attend this hybrid event on 28th and 29th of September. I thank you for your attention. As I say, my presentation was quite short because the objective today is not to present the project, but it's to go to the results. And the first results is the one presented by Christian Boissavy about the 5 key guidelines. Christian, the floor is yours.
Okay, so I hope you hear me. I will try to put.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, the presentation. Do you see my presentation?
Yes, not yet in full screen mode, but we see it.
Not yet in full screen. So I will try to go to the full screen. Is it okay? Philippe, it's okay?
Not yet, but
Not
maybe
yet?
again.
Now
Yeah,
it's okay.
Yeah, floor is yours.
Okay, so I will go quickly to the 5 key guidelines. So on the screen, you can see those 5 key aspects. So legal, regulatory, identification of the risk, funding of the risk transfer scheme, procedural aspect, which are very important, and performance indicator. On my presentation, I will focus mainly on the second, the third, and the fourth aspects, because legal and regulatory, it's, I would say, relatively easy to do in each country, and performance indicators are really country dependent. So if we look at the next slide, beginning with the legal and regulatory boundary condition, I would say that there are 3 main tasks to carry out. First task is to make a full inventory of the energy policy in the country, looking at what is existing in the country in relation with geothermal energy and deployment of geothermal project. The second one is to have a nice evaluation of the geothermal knowledge and data on local geothermal condition, even regional. And the third one is to establish a list as much it's possible to have a full inventory of decision makers at governmental and regional level. If I come back to the second one, identification of the risk to be addressed, I would say that during, and my idea today is to give you the appetite to go through the full result of the Georisk, which are available on the site you see on the screen. And I would say that maybe one of the main achievement of this project was to create this risk register, on my opinion, the first of this kind in the world. So I encourage you to go and to surf on the online risk register, and on my opinion, that will be really a very new and very effective tool. If I go to the next, I don't see. Okay, the second one, I would say we have created during this project is really a good guide for EU country. As on the further screen, you can see the connection to have the presentation of those countries. So you see that it's covering all the country of the partner of the project, and I would say that will be a very good help for the people worldwide who want to make something and to establish this type of guide. On the next one, the third very useful tool, and again, on my opinion, it's really something new worldwide, created during this project, and we nominate that the commercial readiness index. So I don't want to spend too much time on that, but you see that on the right part of the screen, we have the TRL levels. You know that very well. And on the extreme right, we try to make this new commercial readiness index in correspondence with the TRL. So you see that on the blue column, we start with the presumption of the possibility to utilize geothermal energy in the region. And at the top, we see that the public support become no longer essential for maintaining the development of the market. And the idea of Georisk is to try to encourage the people starting in the position 1 to go in the next year to the position 6. If we go to the next one, it's just a short example. This example is from France. So you see that in red, you have the power geothermal plants, in blue, the heat. And you see that the commercial readiness index in France is more or less at the beginning of 4. So you see that in a country where there is this type of risk mitigation system since nearly 40 years now, we are only at the level 4. So you see how many efforts we have to carry out to go to the level 6. And I would say that at this time, worldwide, no country has assessed to be at level 6. So that proves that we have a big work to do to go to this private full level. On the next slide, I will see that we try to summarize all the lessons from existing RMS in the world. So at the end, you can fix on the text. So those funds has to cover for sure electricity, heat, and cogeneration plants. We have seen that base, maybe the best base is the existing French and Netherlands scheme. And to take also into account the hard work we have done through EGEC since a long time with the EGRIF proposal. We have seen recently that some fund helped by the World Bank, for example, and talking about the Turkish RMS, we see that there are nice amendments to take into account coming from this type of new fund. We have seen also that a 60% coverage is really a strict minimum to have an helpful fund. And we have seen also that the coverage up to 80–90% is really the must. And talking about the low premium, we believe that it's necessary to keep low premium. And when I am talking about low premiums, I am talking about in between 3 and 7%. And in that perspective, the French fund is in between 3.5 and the fund in Netherlands is 7%. So I believe we have strict to fix on this type of premium. And the last, and maybe the last very interesting tool we developed with our partner from Hungary, Poland, and Greece is to make an inventory of the potential geothermal plants to be drilled. So I just put you here a figure. So it's really necessary to make this inventory to have a full picture of the potential of the country, not only to say there are many things to do, but also to make a clear inventory. And that's really necessary to achieve the goal we want to fix in each country. And last but not least, coming to the financial tools, we have created also a new robust approach. I would say it's something not so complicated. Everybody can try to do it. First step, you have to make this full inventory. And secondly, you have to go to this financial tool. It's very well explained in Georisk. We published a paper on the Reykjavik Geothermal International Congress. So I believe there are already many papers accessible, and it's very easy to try to create such a tool in all the countries of the world. Coming back to the fourth aspect, procedural aspect, I would say that I just put here, because I don't want to be too long, I just put there the organization of the Hungarian Geothermal Risk Management Fund, and you see that it's something quite easy to do, with a secretariat, with experts coming from outside, with a technical committee. So it's something very simple, and I would say that it's something very robust again and very easy to apply. And coming to the end, regarding the performance indicators, I put in red the three main items. So it's really necessary to have a performance indicator, because if you don't have, after 1 or 2 or 3 years, you cannot see what is wrong, what is good. In that perspective, you need to have dedicated performance indicators. And in that case, depending on the country, could be the reduction of CO2 emission, that the example that is the example of Switzerland, for example. The main topic is that. For example, in France, it's another way is the sustainability of the fund, because we want to have a very perennial system used by everybody. And maybe if we go to Turkey, maybe here the point is the internal guidelines and targets to attract the private company to invest in geothermal. And I believe with those three main performance indicators, that could be very easy to evaluate the performance of the fund. And I believe, for me, it's just the end. We have created also an online help desk to replicate what has been done in the targeted country. So you have the link to the help desk, and I believe again that's something which is very new, worldwide, developed specifically for geothermal energy. And with that last slide, I finish my speech. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christian. Really clear, and I hope people have time to digest, and feel free to come back to us with some questions if you have. Now we will start the first roundtable discussion with a series of presentations on the key conclusion of our project, and we give the floor for that first to Anna Maria Nador for Hungary. Anna Maria, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Please, if okay, I show my screen. Okay. Can you see my screen now, or it is?
Yes, not in full screen mode, but soon it will.
Is it in full screen mode now?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so good afternoon, everybody, and I would like to give you a very brief review on the brand new Hungarian risk mitigation scheme. So, as it was already mentioned several times in the introduction, the aim of Georisk was to establish a risk insurance all over Europe and in some key target countries, and one target country was actually Hungary. The reason is that the good geothermal conditions. Oh, sorry. Can you still see my screen? Oh, sorry. I made a mistake. Show screen.
We can see your screen, Ana Maria.
Sorry? Can you see my screen? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, yes, sorry, I just made some mistake. So the reason is that the good geothermal conditions of Hungary are, of course, very well known. This is a large sedimentary basin. So in terms of total installed capacity, Hungary is ranked the 4th in geothermal direct use in Europe. And we actually have, because of the geology, two main types of geological reservoirs. One are these very thick porous basin fill sediments, which are mostly used for greenhouse heating and of course some other type of heating. But these are regionally extended and hydraulically connected geothermal aquifers, so it's like a big sponge. So actually the exploration is quite low. However, the other main type of the geothermal reservoirs are represented by the basement rocks, which form the basement of the Pannonian Basin. These are fractured limestones, dolomites, which provide really the high yield and high temperature waters for geothermal district heating. But on the other hand, the exploration risk for this type of reservoirs is much higher because you have to find the permeable zones, the fault zones. So here the risk is very high. So that's why a kind of geothermal risk insurance has been on the agenda in Hungary for quite a long time. And I'm very happy to inform you that very much thanks to the Georisk project, this Hungarian risk insurance scheme was officially launched on the 4th of June this year. So on this slide, you see a very short summary of this scheme. So the program owner is the Ministry of Innovation and Technology. So this is the ministry responsible for energy issues in Hungary. The operator is the Mining and Geological Survey of Hungary, because we were the partners in Georisk project. So we create this link between the ministry and the Georisk. The total budget of this fund is about 16 million euros. And the source of the budget is state budget. So it's coming from the so-called Climate and Nature Protection Action Plan. The duration of this call is actually 3 years, so it will last till the end of 2023 with a continuous submission. And the eligible partners are companies and different budgetary authorities, so like municipalities and their consortia. And the eligible activities include drilling of production reinjection doublets between a depth range of 1,000 to 2,500 meters for geothermal energy production. This very special depth range was defined partly based on geological considerations, partly because below 2,500 meters we have geothermal concession in Hungary, and we did not want to mix the two systems. So drilling of production reinjection doublets, drilling of only reinjection wells to complement already operating systems. This is very important because reinjection, unfortunately, is a very rare operation in Hungary. So very deliberately, the program owner wanted to support the drilling of more reinjection wells. The eligible activities also encompass transformation or renovation of active thermal water wells for geothermal energy production, transformation, renovation of abandoned wells, so like old hydrocarbon wells, and pipeline construction, but pipeline only between the production and reinjection wells and till the primary heat center. So these are the eligible activities. The individual project costs may range from approximately 300 euros to 1.5 million euros, and the eligible costs are related only to drilling and testing. So no any preparatory costs, geological exploration costs are eligible, and the reimbursement happens after the well tests are performed. And the rate of success, actually, this is a very interesting hybrid system of risk mitigation and also non-refundable grants, because it also pays 30% for successful projects, 40% for partially successful projects, and 60% for unsuccessful projects. And how this evaluation is made, that the applicant has to predefine the expected yield and temperature in the feasibility study when the application is submitted. And then he makes the drilling, makes the well test, and if the real values reach at least 80% of the expected values, then it means a successful project, so it gets back 30% funding. if it is between the real flow and temperature values, so the power is between 60 and 80% of the predefined value, then it is a partially successful project and gets back 40% of the drilling and testing costs. And if it is the real values, the measured values are below 60% of the expected values, then it is a non-successful project and gets back 60% of funding. The evaluation is done or will be done by an independent group of experts. A very brief summary on the first experiences and the lessons learned. What I would like to emphasize that the history of the Hungarian scheme very much benefits that it really had a very well-founded political commitment on the establishment of such a scheme for deep geothermal. So even some earlier legislation, like a governmental decision coming from the 2018, or in the National Energy Strategy, or in the National Energy and Climate Action Plan. So these official energy strategy documents all explicitly mention that Hungary should establish such a scheme. And of course, on top of that, the Georisk project was a huge additional extra, which really accelerated this whole process. Our experience was that even the concept that we should have some sort of risk insurance scheme, it was clear for quite a long time, but to actually formulate the core text was really a long procedure with many iterations, so nearly 1.5 years. And the main problem we faced that the technical content was in many times in contradiction with the usability of the financial sources, because the financial sources of this grant is coming from the state budget. There are very strict financial restrictions for what type of activities the state budget can be used. So it created a lot of problem. The other lesson I would like to highlight, which was really also surprising for us, that from the last 3 months, we realized that the Hungarian actors are not really familiar yet with the concept of this kind of risk insurance. And here I would like to refer back Christian's presentation on this commercial readiness index. So probably Hungary made a step, but probably a too big step. Because this goal or this concept really requires very well prepared and concrete project ideas. So a project idea where there is a very sound geological model, the drilling licenses are already available. So actually just the drilling and the geological risk of the drilling itself has to be handled. However, because of the past different support schemes, it seems that the Hungarian actors still expect a much looser system, that there is a support, that they have some ideas that they would like to drill here or there, but they don't have this very soundly prepared project proposals. But so we had a lot of correspondence with the actors, and now it seemed that they start to realize that this is a totally new type of support scheme. And so far, we received 1 application officially from a municipality, but we are aware that at least 4 or 5 major project proposals are under preparation, and we know that they will be submitted in the autumn. So probably in the winter we will have more experience about how this brand new scheme is working in Hungary. So thank you very much for your attention. This is what I wanted to share from Hungary.
Thank you very much, Anna-Maria, and we are quite glad in Georisk that indeed we have been able to see this development in Hungary during the project duration. So congratulations to the Hungarian partners. And now I give the floor to Beata Kepinska to present us the situation for Hungary. Beata, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Philip. Could you please make me the presenter?
You will be 1 minute, one second.
Do you see my screen?
Yes, not yet in full screen mode.
Just a moment. Here it is. So thank you very much again for giving me floor. Poland, the country which is not as well advanced in introduction and establishing the framework for introduction the geothermal. Sorry, I don't see my screen. How about you?
For us, we see it, and it's the slide number 2.
Okay, so I will try without this the slides. I don't know what has happened. And first of all, we are on the way to establish such kind of risk mitigation scheme in our country, following the best practice examples from Europe, namely France and also Hungary and Netherlands maybe. But let's have a look first at the geothermal energy market situation in our country. In fact, this is a kind as a two-track situation. Why? Because we have 6 geothermal district heating systems installations which have been operating for many years, some of them for over 25 years. So for them, they are situated on this graph somewhere close to the public insurance scheme, on the triangle showing the relevant risk mitigation scheme according to market development and maturity of particular installations. So for this type of installations, we see the need to consider support to accelerate and to smooth operation of these plants by proper risk mitigation schemes in the form of public risk insurance fund, both short term, for example, for drilling next exploitation wells to make some improvements, etc., but also the need for long-term insurance risk for operation stage. On the other hand, in last years, we see progress in development of new projects oriented for introduction the geothermal element into existing district heating systems. So now ongoing are several or a dozen new projects. For them, the public support in the forms of grants and loans is a relevant tool to accelerate and to support their development. In recent years, 2016, by this year, 2021, August, several priority programs were introduced to support and to limit the risk related to this stage of development. These programs I will show in a while. The main beneficiaries of this type of support at the early stage of market development are local governments, so very similar like in case on Hungary, and also some other entities. However, this type of support does not meet all needs and types of particular investors, especially the operators from the first group, which are already active on the market for many years. And for them, there is a time to consider geothermal risk insurance fund. Such necessity we pointed out for several years. So Georisk is one of the next in the box of projects in which we took part just to support and to facilitate to establish such kind of risk mitigation scheme in our country. We would also like to stress that after the second stage of support given to initiate the new project, one will need to transfer into another tool like public insurance scheme during the long-term operation even of these new projects in the perspective of several years or so. I mentioned the priority programs which were launched in 5 last years to support the early stage of geothermal market development in our country. They are listed here on the slide. There are 4 of them. Altogether, the budget, mostly in form of grants, non-repayable grants and also loans, totals to about 1 million Polish zloty. That means that is quite a lot of budget, quite a lot of public support and aid to develop next geothermal, especially district heating systems with the geothermal component, but also some other types of installations like cogeneration or even small power plants. So in the coming years, we expect several new district heating systems. What is important that these programs act also as kind of risk mitigation scheme in short-term run for first geothermal research or exploration well. That means that the beneficiaries, especially local governments, bear almost no risk in case of negative well. But the investors other than local governments are eligible mostly for loans or the mixture of grants and partial loans. As I mentioned already, not all needs can be covered by these programs, and for operating district heating system with geothermal element, the Geothermal Risk Insurance Fund is more and more necessary. To cover different types of risk one can meet during long-term operation of the plant, like resource risk, technical risk, also some other accidents and cases. What was presented is summarized more or less on these slides, because during the whole project our team from our institute has cooperating very closely with the key stakeholders, especially the operators of geothermal district heating systems, some other experts from the leading Polish institutions, and also Geological Survey, Polish Academy of Science, some academia and experts. And they expressed their feedbacks even in the form of the auxiliary reports, which were used to be incorporated in some deliverables and the reports of these projects, and everything can be summarized and or briefly presented in such kind of sentence that to accelerate the geothermal energy market development and to attract more investors, it is necessary to introduce gradually relevant types of supportive measures of risk mitigation schemes, including grants and loans at the very early stage of development, and then gradually go into Geothermal Risk Insurance Fund. First of all, of course, public insurance fund. The best way to do this is to follow the proposals. And trying to summarize already and coming to the end, what are, in our opinion, and what was the most beneficial from the Polish point of view, what types of project achievements towards implementing geothermal risk insurance scheme in Poland are important. There is plenty of them. In fact, key deliverables of the project, some of them were already mentioned by Christian and by Anna Maria. First of all, framework proposal, how to establish a geothermal risk insurance fund in Poland, following the best practices and experience from other countries, including those taking part in the Georisk project. And then the main effect, this is our success, that the geothermal risk insurance fund was included, for example, into proposed geothermal roadmap for Poland by 2040. We hope that this fund will be introduced earlier than in 2040. This map is under elaboration now in the Ministry of Climate and Environment. We are expecting the sectoral consultations this fall, but also the suggestions and the outcomes of the Georisk projects were the inspiration, and some assumptions and elements were used while preparation the proposal for the one of the pillars of the geothermal roadmap for Poland. We were also fortunate to cooperate with outstanding experienced experts and operators who justified the need that such kind of tools is also important in our countries. So these are our arguments while talking and during the contact with decision makers. And finally, some general statements. The Georisk is one of the most important EU projects in the so-called geothermal baskets, because it aimed to create an overall environment facilitating the acceleration of geothermal energy development in many countries. We need to have a very sound, very solid umbrella to develop the geothermal sector especially during this geothermal decade, which was mentioned by Philip at the beginning. Secondly, Georisk provided consistent background and proposal how to introduce and elaborate proper risk mitigation schemes, especially this risk insurance fund, to create proper long-term stable. I would like to point out the stable long-term geothermal conditions for investment and the acceleration in our country. Of course, each country, each partner has to be in mind that some proposals, some assumptions also have to take into account necessary legal, administrative and formal regulations at the national level, which may differ from country to country, and also some general EU provisions in this respect. It is also important that the decision makers take advantage of our proposal. And I'm really very pleased to say that there are indications, already some facts, that it is and will be so. After almost 20 years of proposals and feedbacks coming from geothermal environment, geothermal community in our country, that such kind of risk insurance fund shall be introduced in Poland. So thank you again for the coordinator, for Philip, for Erzek, for inviting us to be the partners in this project, and also to all partners with huge experience for the wonderful cooperation. We took a lot of advantage, and also we hope that thanks to Georisk, we are on a much better track, and the Georisk insurance fund, geothermal risk insurance fund in Poland is much closer than it was before the project started. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Beata, for your nice words. And now we are flying to Greece, and we give a floor to Spiros Karitsas. Floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Philippe. Hello, everybody. Could you please make me presenter?
It's coming.
Okay, so can you see my screen?
I confirm.
Okay, thank you. So I'm Spiros Karitsas from Greece, from the Center for Renewable Energy Sources and Saving, which has been a partner of the Georisk project. And I will be presenting the actions that we have performed towards the establishment of a risk mitigation scheme for geothermal projects in Greece. No, sorry. Okay. So, in brief, the main steps that have during the project that have taken place towards the development of a Greek risk mitigation scheme have been, first of all, to make an assessment of all the necessary aspects and information relevant to such a scheme. The technical aspects concerning the geothermal market, potential geothermal projects, as also mentioned by Christian Boissavi in his presentation, through an inventory of future projects. Also an important aspect was to identify all relevant regulatory and legislative issues that could be connected to a risk mitigation scheme. And in addition, the financial aspects, which were mainly based on a simulation of a future risk mitigation scheme. Another important activity was a workshop, which was also combined with a dedicated questionnaire in order to identify the main risks that geothermal projects may face in Greece. In this workshop, mainly technical related stakeholders took part in order to assist us during the identification of the main risks. A next step was to perform 3 workshops with the participation of stakeholders that were mainly from the group of decision makers and policy makers, in order to present them the project, to present to them the main results and tools of the projects, and as a third step, to have discussions with them concerning the development of a Greek risk mitigation scheme. These 3 workshops took place last year. Another activity was the contact with 3 Greek ministries. First of all, the Ministry of Environment and Energy, and in addition, the Ministry of Development and the Ministry of Finance. And the communication with regional authorities from regions that have geothermal potential through open letters in order to initiate a communication with these stakeholders and involve them in the discussions concerning the development of the Greek risk mitigation scheme. And as a final step of our activities towards the development of the risk mitigation scheme was the development of a proposal for a risk mitigation scheme and presentation of this proposal to the Ministry of Environment and Energy in order to start some actions towards the works that must be performed by the ministry in order to establish such a scheme. So those were the activities in brief. Let's see some very quickly some details. We could say that Greece has a great geothermal potential, not only in the mainland, but in addition, some islands like Milos Island, Nisyros Island, Santorini Island in the Aegean Sea. Concerning the market situation, we should highlight that there are applications concerning direct uses of geothermal energy for greenhouse heating through thermal spas, for agricultural uses. We have also shallow geothermal applications, but on the other hand, a main aspect of the Greek market is that although there is the potential, there is no electricity power production through geothermal energy. There have been there have been proposals for some potential future projects, but however, right now, no power production is produced through geothermal energy. These were some findings relevant to the assessment of the technical aspects related to the risk mitigation scheme. Here in this table, we can see the findings of the risk assessment and evaluation, which was done with the collaboration of several stakeholders. And we could mention that the main risks that should be mitigated concerning the geothermal projects in Greece have to do with socioeconomic aspects. First of all, talking about financial uncertainties, lack of investments, and a second main aspect is the lack of social acceptance of such projects mainly in the island areas such as Nisiros and Milos islands. But in any case, we should mention that the main risks of the potential projects are identified to be socioeconomically related. Going further and investigating the relevant legislation and policies, we should mention that right now, no risk mitigation schemes are presently available in Greece. However, we have identified two relevant activities that could be connected with the risk mitigation schemes. First of all, that the Greek Geological Survey performs and has performed exploration activities throughout Greece. These activities reduce the potential risks that is related to technical aspects. And as a second aspect, we should mention that municipalities using funds from the National Strategic Reference Framework can develop infrastructure for district heating networks. This means that some costs related to lack of funding could be reduced. A further step was to identify the legislation and the policies that, although are not directly connected to risk mitigation schemes, could offer a basis on which the risk mitigation scheme that we have in mind could be based on. We identified, I don't want right now to go into many details. However, we identified the legislation acts and some policy acts coming from the National Energy and Climate Plan that could be used as a basis in order to establish this risk mitigation scheme. Next step was to simulate the risk mitigation scheme, having in mind that it could be either a public or a private scheme that would be based on insurance premiums that would offer coverage to the companies in case that they would not be successful. Here you can see the results, having in mind that we present here some combinations of different insurance premiums and coverages. And we could say that the main finding from this simulation is that depending on the assumed success rate, the scheme could have a range of different outcomes. It could either collapse after 6 to 8 years, while it could also be a sustainable scheme even after 10 years. This depends on the premium and coverage combination that we take into account. A specific case for Greece that has to do with the geology and the geothermal exploration of Greece is that we don't have, we didn't take into account an overall success rate, but we took into account for this scenario a 90% success rate for high enthalpy proven fields, a 90% success rate for low enthalpy fields, and a 67% success rate for high enthalpy unexplored fields. This low success rate for the high enthalpy unexplored fields leads to the to most scenarios being financially non-sustainable after a period of 7 to 8 years. Some other findings from the 10-year simulation have to do with different scenarios concerning the success rates. We had as a common basis the insurance premium and the coverage. And we can see that depending on the success rate, we have at the end different outcomes. We can see, for example, that if we have a success rate of 90% for high enthalpy proven fields and low enthalpy fields, and only 50% for unexplored fields, then after 7 years, the insurance scheme collapses. While if we have a 90% success rate for all potential projects, then we have a sustainable and a financially sustainable scheme even after 10 years. After 10 years, the scheme will have around 10 million euros, meaning that it will be in the same level as it started. So we identified that a main factor that determines the sustainability of the scheme is the success rate, which on its turn has to do with the exploration data that is available for each project. So having done all this assessment of the legislative, financial issues, the technical issues, and the relevant risks, the development of a RMS proposal for Greece followed. We used all this input that was established through the Georisk project, through the activities of the Georisk project, based on the discussions that we had with the relevant stakeholders. And as proven through the financial simulations that were presented in the previous slides, we concluded that perhaps the best case for Greece would be to have initially a risk mitigation scheme that would be based on non-repayable grants. Based on this, a risk mitigation proposal was sent to the Ministry of Environment and Energy in June 2021, around 3 months ago. And this risk mitigation scheme proposal presented the required actions that must be performed towards the establishment of a risk mitigation scheme, the type of activities that could be covered, the eligible expenses, how different risk zones could be defined, because as we saw in the simulations, we had 3 types of success rates that are related to the risks, to the risk zones, how each project is defined, the aid intensity, also the determination of the maximum amount of financial aid per project, which would be based on the risk zone and the level of project success, what the requirements for submitting an application should be, and finally, the determination on financial resources, where the money that would support this scheme should come from. So this proposal, which is based on all the Georisk activities, has been presented to the Ministry of Environment and Energy. And right now, our next steps are to intensify our communications with higher level persons from the Ministry of Environment and Energy, people from the office of the minister, for example, always, of course, having in mind that specific barriers may occur. First of all, we should have in mind that the timing of proposing such a project, a proposal, is very important. For example, in June and July that we had some initial communications, some very urgent issues occurred in Greece. We had all the forest fires in summer, so the focus of the ministry went somewhere else. They couldn't focus on the risk mitigation scheme for geothermal, for example. Another issue is the political will. We can propose, of course, this risk mitigation scheme, but in any case, in order to move forward, political will is necessary from the side of the government. And of course, always having in mind that some key persons from the ministry and from other authorities may change depending on the changes made from the government. So these are our next steps. And to conclude, I could say that before starting the Georisk project, there was nothing available concerning risk mitigation schemes in Greece concerning geothermal energy, and also we could say renewable energy sources in general. Through the activities of the Georisk project, we have performed very important activities concerning communication with the key stakeholders, concerning the assessment of all relevant issues as presented before. And now we are on a very higher level of information compared to the beginning of the Georisk project that could be used as a basis for the further for establishing and developing the risk mitigation scheme in Greece. So thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, Philip.
Thank you, Spiros. And now to conclude this session, I'm giving the floor to Virginie Schmidley from France to present us the new expert fund. The floor is yours.
Yes, Philippe, Thomas is supposed to show my slide. Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. The idea today is to present you the project of a new French geothermal risk scheme. As you may know, France is already endorsed by a risk mitigation scheme for France mainland. But the idea, and that is supported by the ADEME, was prepared the slide today, but is not here today, and apologize for that, is to develop a new scheme called the French Geothermal Guarantee Scheme, that is supposed to be an export scheme, but also for French overseas department. So to be clear from the beginning, this is only a project. The ADEME has already started some work about that and has been supported in that by consultancy agency and a law firm. So this is what I'm going to present to you today, the first result of that study. The fund, this guarantee fund, is supposed to, of course, cover geological risk. It aims at developing and facilitating a deep geothermal project in France, overseas, but also all abroad in the world. So except of France mainland, every part of the world could be concerned by that fund. And an interesting point is also that both projects of geothermal power and thermal production could be concerned by that fund. If you can move to the next slide. Yeah, thank you. So after having interviewed many operators, the studies identified that main characteristic. We have already seen that in the previous presentation. It is the risk coverage rate is a very, very important factor. It appears that below 80% investor won't go into a geothermal project. So that fund, if it happens, could propose a guarantee minimum of 80% of the drilling cost. The idea is also to take into account the entire project from the realization of the exploration drilling up to the commissioning phase. This is important because we have to be sure that there is something in front of the geothermal resource, and it is also a good way to check the financial and the economic and technical competency of the operators that could be followed by the fund. An interesting idea is that fund could be offer guarantee on its own, but could also come in addition to existing funds such as GRMF or GDF. This has to be explored. And of course, it is a fund that will be open to any operators worldwide. It can't be a French fund. This is due to the rules of competition inside Europe, and legally speaking, this fund will be open to any kind of operators. Next slide, please. Thank you. Here you have, so to say, a global view on how the fund could operate. So it's theoretical at the moment, but it's better to understand how it could work. The fund could provide a refundable advance to finance the exploration studies, maybe something like 40% of the amount of that exploration studies, preliminary studies. That advance won't be repaid in case of failure of the first drilling. That is an important point to have in mind. If we go to the project, in case of power project, of course the exploration drilling will be covered by that fund. And if the geological resource is proved, we can go ahead and pay and take into cover the other campaign. In case of an heating project, of course, every drilling will be taken into account by the fund. Regarding the condition to subscribe that fund, it is planned that the operator could pay a premium between 5 and 7% of the drilling cost. This could be a huge amount, and the fund, as it is think at the moment, has said that with the first successful project, there will be royalties, and that royalties could help to lower the premium paid by the operator. So it is like a virtual circle. And like in many other risk mitigation scheme, the project taken in coverage by the fund will be selected by a technical committee, and it is quite clear that committee will have an international reach in that case. Next slide, please. Here, just to have some idea on how the fund has been modelized. This is very, so to say, simple, but this study is based on nearly 40 preliminary studies from French operator, but also international operators, with 50% of success, which led to approximately 20 exploration campaigns covered, and with a number of successful projects of 12. This could represent 300 megawatts of energy production. And something which is very important and that ADEME has in mind, it is a leverage effect. So if we put 40 million euros to start that fund, it could lead to nearly 900 million euros of other investments, which is a very, very good leverage effect. And in that case, it will be easier to convince I don't know, public funds or operators to get in that fund. And for the last slide, thank Thomas. Yeah, so just to let you know where we stand at the moment. So it is something that ADEME is leading, but in relation with the French industry and in liaison with Georisk results. We have now to convince financial institutions such as IGC Invest, which is a subsidiary of ADEME. It's a kind of investment bank for the French Energy Transition Agency. We also have other entities like Caisse des dépôts et consignations, the French Development Agency, AFD, which is more known in abroad France, outside France. And we also have the European Bank of Investment. The ADEME will, of course, continue its work in liaison with the industry. And as I said, that fund could operate in complement with existing funds. So we have important discussion to lead with the GDF or GMF to see if that mechanism could be possible. This is all for me, and I just wanted to thank you all the partners of Georisk and especially EGEC to have coordinated this very interesting project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Virginie. And yes, it's a really interesting fund that you have presented, so I hope it will be soon operational. With this presentation, now we are ending the first session. So now it's my time to give the floor to my colleague Thomas Garavetian to moderate the second session. Thomas, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Philippe. Maybe before we actually start with the panel, although we are just a little bit behind on time, there's a quick question about Poland, which is that the national RRP fund has little on allocation of money for geothermal heating and energy efficiency. And the question is, how is Poland going to make the financing of the de-risking scheme? Beata, if you already have a very short answer.
Thank you very much, Thomas, for this question. The source of financing this geothermal risk insurance scheme is considered to be either from the National Recovery and Resilience Plan. This is one of the options considered now, maybe from some other national sources. And also before, it was an idea to make use of some international funds, but these two sources, the first source I mentioned, the National Recovery and Resilience Plan, because the proposal to establish this fund was submitted as one of the pillars in the group of the topics to National Recovery Plan. But this is one option.
Right, thank you, Beata. Now we are indeed going to move to the roundtable. So just first I'm going to give the floor to Marie-Jeanne. So while you open your mic, camera, and start showing your screen, I will a bit explain how it is going to go. So typically each panelist is going to make a very short overview of the situation in their respective countries for geothermal de-risking or geothermal support, and then we're going to have a discussion. So don't hesitate if you have any question about what you hear, or if you want input on specific topics. We can see your screen now. Maybe if you're able to put the presentation in full screen. Okay. All right. Maybe if you're able to press F5 to put it full screen.
Okay.
I mean, it's okay like that. We can.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
I mean, just brief presentation about basically our recent efforts. I would say that are not yet resulted in complete de-risking process, but we did some job. We would like to present it. As you know, Croatian potential is located in Pannonian part of Croatia, which is basically the best part is the border with the Hungary. We have excellent geothermal gradient. It is 60% higher than the European one. We do believe that we have potential to develop this huge geothermal potential in for district heating purposes, for agriculture purposes, and also for the electricity current production. We already have some results in that sense, and this is basically what I wanted to show you. What we did now during this COVID situation, in which we focused ourselves to analyze the data that our agency, basically we are a hydrocarbon agency, and everything here in Croatia is under petroleum law, meaning that the use of geothermal energy for energy purposes is defined by petroleum law, and all the data, all the seismic, all the wells we have, we use to perform in-house study, which ended up in recognition of 75 blocks that are interesting for the further development. You can see these red ones are suitable for the electricity production. The blue ones are good for district heating purposes. So this is the step that and the job that we provide in order to de-risk basically the whole process, because all of these 75 prospects are having the well with a tested potential. So I mean, this is basically something that is not exploration any longer, but is more like appraisal, I would say so. And now the issue is how to develop this significant potential. For the electricity, we are trying to attract private investments. Meanwhile, for the district heating, recently we had some success in obtaining the European money from the recovery fund. So it seems that the agency will enter into operational phase, what I call, I mean, in order to acquire some gravimetry, magnetometry, seismic, and even to drill geothermal wells. We would like also to extend this concept to the agriculture and also to the electricity generation. And it seems that especially for the agriculture, we should be needing a new, let's say, law, geothermal law, because we do not feel ourselves comfortable any longer into petroleum law, because we cannot cover all the specific items that are coming out due to the fact that there are a lot of similarities, but however, it is not the same process. So basically, this is the state of the art here in Croatia. So yes, we are going to continue in that direction. So thank you very much. Just brief introduction.
Okay, thank you for this very nice introduction about the state of things in Croatia. Now, Gregor, I will give you the screen as well. Or would you prefer I show your slides?
Okay, I'll do it myself.
Okay, great.
Hopefully everything will work.
Yes, we can see. It's all good.
Okay. Thank you very much for the invitation. It was a great pleasure to to hear everybody's presentation. I think I learned a lot today because our geothermal sector is not that well developed. We use mainly quite old wells. So just a brief overview. On the top left, you see the dots are representing the use of shallow geothermal energy. A large majority of it is used by heat pumps, type of water to water. So this shallow goes to 250 meters. A slide below, left down, shows the potential of deep geothermal potential, which is on the eastern part of the country bordering Hungary and Croatia. And the bottom left shows the boreholes that are deeper than 1 kilometer. So these two last pictures go well hand in hand. So you see the majority of the potential is in our eastern part of the country. These are a bit of the numbers how the geothermal energy in Slovenia is used. So it's mainly used for direct use of geothermal water. Unfortunately, no production of electricity is in place in Slovenia. In our current resilient recovery plan, we plan to have on offer 20 million euros for investments in production of electricity through geothermal energy. Also, the problem is there is only one doublet, one reinjection in use. So the problem is sustainable use of thermal water. So we need to drill some more reinjection to make this use more sustainable. So if we make a new wells now, the production will be quite limited. So at this moment, we cannot make additional usage without reinjection. So the main challenges in Slovenia are, as I said, boreholes are quite old, so we need to make new ones. Only one reinjection well. So, for example, for agricultural use, we are now planning to invest in new reinjection wells to keep the capacity high enough. As I said, the main potential is in eastern Slovenia, and there we have a potential around 70 degrees centigrades. We also have some bores to the depth of almost 4 and just beyond 4 kilometers, where they identified potential of 202 degrees centigrades. These are also the potential bores where we could start testing for the demo installation for the production of the electricity. Many abandoned oil wells also make possibility of other geothermal installations. And one thing that was also identified with our partner is high interest for twinnings and knowledge transfer projects, especially with our Geologic Institute. So this is a very short presentation. Maybe just to for the finish, we don't have any schemes for geological risk mitigation scheme. this is something that we need to do also in the frame of our next directive regarding renewables. And well, that's it from my side.
Thank you, Gregor, for this very good overview. Now I will give the floor to Bill. So yes, making you presenter, and you can open your microphone and webcam as well.
Yes, good afternoon. Just 1 second.
Yeah, we see you, we hear you, and we see your screen, so you're good to go.
Okay, good. I'd like to start with thanking the organizers for the opportunity to participate in the webinar today. And so what I'd like to do is just give you a brief introduction to our company's approach to manage and de-risk geothermal projects for district heating. Just 1 sec. Okay, so a brief introduction to our company, GeoOp. We're a partnership between E.ON, Iceland Drilling, and Ross DK. And together, the partnership, we have the technical skills and experience for the development of low enthalpy geothermal resources for district heating. And as a company, we strive to maximize geothermal energy production while minimizing risk and cost. And so the way we do this is that, well, over time, we've seen numerous geothermal projects that have greatly exceeded time and budget estimates, have not met thermal energy production estimates, or have failed completely. And this was largely due to poor planning and execution, especially in the early phases of projects. So to mitigate this, we've developed what we call our asset maturation process, which is a phased management approach to de-risk and mature investment decisions. So what we've done is we've outlined all the tasks and deliverables within each project phase, along with the decision gate criteria that must be met in order to mature the project to the next phase. So in short, our asset maturation process is designed to ensure that the proper work is done to provide the knowledge needed at the right time to make informed decisions. One tool we've developed, which we find really crucial throughout project life, is what we call our Geothermal Business Case Calculator, or SCALA. And so this is a business case calculator for the assessment of geothermal development projects. And we use this for screening and optimizing development concepts, generating CapEx and OpEx estimates, and also reduce risk and uncertainty. So together with the asset maturation process, this provides the information needed then for decision makers to mature projects. And so what we see are key elements for the successful development of geothermal projects is to form a partnership with local district heating companies, use a phase management approach to de-risk and mature projects. That would be our asset maturation process. To make sure that we're running business case models all throughout the lifetime of a project, especially early on during the feasibility and exploration phases. And we use our SCALA tool to do that. And another important element is we work on these projects as an integrated asset team. And so that was it for my introduction.
Okay, thank you, Bill, for this good and concise introduction. Now, Sébastien, I will give you the floor and make you presenter.
Yeah.
Yes, we can see your screen. Maybe if you're able to make it full screen.
Yeah, I will do that.
Yeah, it's all good.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm representing today the Walloon region. What I will present you is what is done currently in the Walloon region to promote the development of the geothermal energy. So we can see in the, sorry, I have a problem with my screen, that in the Walloon region, you have a lot of work which is currently done to estimate the geothermal energy potential of these resources. We have also legislative work to promote the geothermal energy. And then last but not least, we have some call of projects and some projects in order to identify pilot projects just to promote the geothermal energy in this region. I will move to the next slide. Here we have, regarding the studies, some studies in order to estimate the potential of deep geothermal energy, shallow geothermal energy, but also geothermal potential from mines. Those studies have the same structure. We have, first of all, data collection. So data collection regarding the energy consumption, but also about the subsoil characteristics. That's the first point. The second point is an estimation of the technical and economic potential of those resources. After that, we have an economic assessment. So we have heard a lot this afternoon about CapEx estimation, OpEx, net present value. So for some projects in those studies, we have an estimation of the cost of all the cash flow of a project of geothermal energy. And then after that, we have a mapping exercise just to show on a map where you have the resource and the demand of energy. And last but not least, you have the proposition of an action plan just to see how we can promote the development of deep geothermal, shallow geothermal, and geothermal from mines in the Walloon regions. That's the first point of my presentation. Now I will move to the second point. So in the Walloon region, you have also a lot of work which is done by the authorities to promote the geothermal energy. For example, you have the heat strategy. In the heat strategy, you have some actions, some measures which were written. By example, you have the promotion of the development of geothermal energy. You have the identification of suitable areas for the promotion of geothermal energy. You have action just to see how you can, in the region, reduce the risk of deep geothermal energy. That's the risk linked to the drilling and to find the right and the suitable location. You have also a measure relating to the permitting system. That's the first one. The second point is over the aid intensity. So we have participated to this study. So we have a review of the investment rate, aid rate to promote the geothermal energy. Considering all the capex, the capital expenditure, and the opex, so all the cash flow, the aid intensity is currently reviewed for the geothermal energy, but also for all the renewable energy in the Walloon region. That's an ongoing work. Last but not least, but we have also a decree regarding the underground resource. And in this decree, you have several points like an action plan for the management of the underground resource. You have also some point regarding the data collection, but also the obligation to report the exploitation of this resource. It was my second point of the presentation. And finally, in the Walloon region, you have some core of projects to develop the geothermal energy. So you have a budget from the Walloon region of more than 7 million to finance projects regarding geothermal energy. But here we have a project, a focus on a shallow geothermal energy. So with the closed system, open system, but also mining geothermal energy. Regarding more specifically the geothermal mining, a study will be launched as soon as possible just to identify some kind of pilot projects in 3 main cities of the region. So in Charleroi, Mons, and Liège. And I have finished my short presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you, Sébastien. So all these short introductions were very interesting. Now I will invite all the panelists of the roundtable to switch on their cameras. And I will also invite all the attendees of the webinar to send any question they might have about what they just heard. And we're going to have a more open sort of discussion, so with some questions and answers. So we'll also maybe switch on my camera. So indeed, so thank you all for these presentations. Maybe one theme in general that emerges is that in all your presentation, you are a little bit at the early stage of the process of setting up risk mitigation schemes. In some cases at the consultation stage, in some cases still a bit at the exploration or mapping where is really the potential, implementing a new regulatory framework. So maybe one question looking at the Georisk project and the presentations from a bit earlier in the afternoon. What type of already conclusions or recommendations from Georisk or from the other countries that were presented earlier would you maybe be interested in? I don't know if someone wants to start.
Yeah, I'll go ahead. Yeah. I found the online risk registration tool to be of interest. It's obviously a major driver, especially early on projects, is trying to understand the risks so that we can set up projects properly to mitigate those risks. So quite often we mitigate risks through expenditures. So it's really important to make sure early on we understand those risks so that we don't end up carrying technical debt throughout the lifetime of a project.
All right, great. Thank you, Bill. Maybe Gregor, if you already have something.
We currently don't have this risk mitigation scheme, but we identified it now in the last several discussions with our stakeholders that we absolutely need one to move from the current situation. We need to establish one to be able to, let's say, make some progress regarding electricity production through geothermal energy.
Yes, thank you. Marijan, I see you nodding. It is a bit the same type of priority for Croatia.
Well, yes, as I said, as Gregor already mentioned, we too also in Croatia, we do not have fully developed scheme, but anyhow, we think that we made a great efforts and great steps in the last 2 years in promotion and everything, and also in the risking of the whole process, since now we are quite confident that we have excellent potential, and it's not how really we are going to structure all this the risking process, but actually how to define our role and the role of the future investors in all this process. We are now trying to make additional step, as I already mentioned, and to leave this study area and to enter into this operational phase, in which we do believe that we can really realize some projects on a mutual benefit for the states, for the local community, and for us.
All right, thank you. Sébastien, if you have
Yeah, maybe I can add some words for the Walloon region. For example, in the Walloon region, you have a mapping exercise just to see where you can find the resource. That's the first point. Second point is regarding the head intensity. When you compare the head for the geothermal energy and the head for the other renewable energy, you can see in the work which is ongoing that the profitability linked to the risk is higher for the geothermal energy.
Right. Thanks. Yeah, indeed, that's a good point, and the importance of mapping is indeed quite high, as we have seen throughout the project. Maybe also specifically about Slovenia and Croatia. We see that in the case of Hungary, there's also this new scheme that Anna Maria just presented. There's this will to maybe have a wider scope than just Hungary and look at the whole Pannonian Basin, where there's a similar geological conditions. So maybe that would be also an interesting angle. And indeed, I don't know if you already have looked at the topic of international cooperation around the geological reservoir.
My comment would be that we are actually all three countries, Croatia, Slovenia, and Hungary, we are all using the same basin. So this is also a subject of cross-border the effect of the cross-border effect, environmental effect. So we need to take a consideration of everybody's involvement here, because we all need to take care that we sustainably use all these resources.
Yes, if I can add, I think that the presentation of Anna Maria from Hungary was very interesting for us, and for sure we are going to study and analyze Hungarian results, especially in the field of the usage of geothermal for the heating purposes. And I think that we can apply some of their ideas also in Croatia, but considering the development of geothermal for the agriculture, we have our own ideas, and also regarding production of electricity.
If I may add this, of course, so what our experience is that these risk mitigation schemes have one part, which is the geology part, which is of course very easy to understand among neighboring countries. But when it comes to money and funds and billions of euros which the national governments are providing, it is much more difficult to organize a common pool, because each country has its own resources and budget, and I think this is the main challenge, the financial part. Of course, the idea of have such an international pool, and in that aspect, the French scheme, which Virginie presented, so this will be as far as I understood, an international scheme applicable for other countries. I think that can be the next step, probably. That how can you from a national level to an international level with such things.
Yeah, thank you for this precision. Indeed, maybe moving a bit more northward, Bill. In Denmark, we have somewhat the development of or the renewed interest of geothermal is a bit driven by private actors, I mean, we have maybe this is also a little bit of question, Sebastian, for you. In the new schemes that I mean the new dynamic of geothermal in Denmark, basically, do you already see an appetite from private stakeholders for geothermal de-risking, asking for this to be implemented before they actually go for project? And or if not, do you think that could actually help attract more private developers? Because I know in Wallonia there's a bit of an issue with maybe having enough stakeholders. So Bill, maybe if you want to start.
Yeah, there's quite a large interest in de-risking projects. So in Denmark, about 60–65% of the homes are connected to district heating networks, and geothermal energy is estimated to be able to account for about 30% of the base load for that heating. So there's more and more interest from local district heating companies to investigate or look into the potential for utilizing geothermal to heat homes. But that risk that you mentioned is one of the biggest stumbling blocks, and largely we mitigate that risk by drilling exploration wells. And that's one of our biggest challenges is basically getting up the funding to drill those exploration wells as a way to mitigate that subsurface risk. But yes, I would say de-risking projects and risk mitigation is a big stumbling block to getting projects going in the private sector in Denmark.
Sebastian?
Yes, and what I can say for the Walloon region, up to now, if you remember, we have a call for tender in the Walloon region, and a call for tender to develop, to finance project of shallow geothermal. And what we can see is that we have a lot of interest from the stakeholders in the Walloon region to develop the geothermal energy, but linked also with district heating technology. So the sector is currently moving a lot in the Walloon region.
All right, that's good to hear. Now we have a raised hand from the audience. So Stepan Vasiliev, I'm going to open the mic, and you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Well, thank you. I don't have any questions at the moment.
Okay, I saw you had a raised hand. It's fine. So I don't know really if actually between yourself as panelists, or if you have a question to the Georisk partners, so that I don't ask all the questions, but otherwise I have some more. Yeah, okay, so I'll go again then.
For the Croatian team, I was wondering the role that oil and gas companies are playing in developing geothermal resources in Croatia.
Sorry, I didn't get you. If you can repeat.
I was curious about it in your country, the role that oil and gas companies are playing in developing or exploring and developing for geothermal resources in Croatia.
Actually, there is INA as the previously national oil company, now is privatized and is basically a member of MOL Group. I mean, they are having some geothermal things in production, let's say, but the recent success, let's say, and development and putting into production of the first geothermal power plant was done by the joint venture of the Turkish, basically, company and the domestic one. So let's say that INA is not fully focused into geothermal now, and we can say that oil and gas companies are not playing a big role. I would rather say that is more like the specialized energy companies are showing much more interest, even from the, distant part of the world. And even recently, yes, some oil and gas companies are studying the data, entering the data room, but they are still just studying, let's say, the data. Who is showing much more interest are, let's say, I would say, energy companies, the companies that are not coming strictly from the oil and gas business. So maybe in the future, we should expect now that in Europe, as it becomes more and more difficult, basically, to explore for oil and gas due to the development of the Green Deal and everything else, we can expect, hopefully, that oil and gas companies would step into development of this geothermal potential here in Croatia. Even if, I mean, to say that the oil and gas business and the geothermal business, of course, are not comparable when it comes to the investment across the borders, let's say. So the level of internationalization of the geothermal business is definitely lower than the oil and gas, I would say so.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if you already have another question, or if we have another question from the audience, but otherwise we are a little bit running over time, so we might just take one more question and wrap up. So, right, I don't see anyone from the audience with a question, and in the panel later. Maybe. Well, we can probably wrap up the discussion. Maybe at the takeaway that I will take from all of your presentation and this roundtable is that well, risk mitigation obviously is quite important, and there's a lot of ways to get at it. First, indeed, the exploration is an important issue to finance, but also that there are a lot of other dimensions. Bill, you mentioned the fact that district heating already is quite well developed in Denmark and plays a role actually in driving a demand towards geothermal energy. And I guess also infrastructure might be an issue in some other cases. Having the right legal framework as well. Marijan, you mentioned the need to transition away from being in the oil and gas legal framework to having actually a geothermal framework. So all these are very interesting elements. So I think indeed it's quite interesting to see all these different national approaches and really this strategic vision. Obviously, that's what also Georisk has been trying to promote with proposing solutions to have risk mitigation transition according to the market maturity. And maybe I will have two final questions because I see there's a question from the audience just now. But the question I wanted to ask is a bit, you already have some plans for the next steps for the geothermal scheme. So in a lot of cases, you are still at the early market uptake stage or at the exploration stage even. You already have some plans for, I don't know, maybe some more insurance scheme instead of just financing exploration, maybe some private involvement in insurance schemes, etc. And then the questions from the audience, first is regarding lithium. So in general, lithium is increasingly popular at the geothermal byproduct. So do you have also some programs to valorize this resource, or do you already assess did you already assess the potential in your respective countries? And then majorly what that's a bit more technical maybe, but what type of imaging technique are you looking at? So I guess maybe whether you are requiring what type of seismic data are you requiring, 2D, 3Ds, etc. So I don't know who wants to start.
Yeah, I'll jump in again. So in Denmark, there is an insurance scheme for the exploration phase, similar to what has been presented elsewhere. I don't think it's as mature as in other countries, but there is an insurance scheme for drilling exploration wells. In terms of type of data that's of interest, of course, seismic data is important, but we really put a lot of weight on drilling and testing exploration wells, because at the end of the day, it's all about flowing wells. You know, what are the flow rates? What are the temperatures? And then can we identify any reservoir architecture or flow impediments that might over time jeopardize production rates? So we put a lot of value on properly designing and testing exploration wells.
Yeah, Sebastian, if you have already some final comments.
Not regarding this question, sorry.
Marijan?
Well, I fully agree with what Bill said. I'm fed up with different, surface techniques, seismic and everything. So, the issue is really how to properly test the exploration ways. It's about really and to establish a flow rate that can generate some positive results. So I fully agree with him.
All right, and Gregor?
Yes, beside the risk mitigation scheme, we also detected that we have some clashing between the water and the mining legislation. So because we don't have that much praxis going on regarding this deep geothermy, we're finding out that we need to do some adjustments also regarding legislation. And this is also the reason why the potential investors don't have a clear picture what all they need to be compliant with when they are discussing a project, what all the documentation and everything, the paperwork they need to do before they can start drilling. And only after that, they need to have that risk mitigation scheme. But there's also a lot of work that must be done before that.
Okay. Thank you. I think we are on a little bit over time, and I see some people already leaving the webinar. So I think we can finish on these remarks. So thank you all for participating in the webinar, and thank you all for this very nice discussion. Maybe I will conclude by giving you rendezvous for the European Geothermal Congress, which will be probably the next step for the presentation of the final Georisk conclusions. And I wish you all a good end of the afternoon. So thank you all, and bye-bye. We will be sending also all the presentation and the recording of the webinar after the end, and answering also to the questions that were asked. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.